I'm extremely sorry for this little difficulty, and thank you, Bolanle, for fitting me in a little bit early. I have a lecture in around 20 minutes time, so I'll just get started. So thank you for inviting me for the talk, and today I'll be speaking a little bit on agricultural cyber-physical system, primarily because the topic of the workshop is around sustainability, and I thought to fit in with that since I'm working on agriculture and machine learning approaches in this area. So this sort of fitted in very well. Myself, Lipika, a senior lecturer, and my main research interest is around the area of concurrency control techniques in, say, for example, software updates or file system backup. But I have been very actively working in the area of applied machine learning, especially in the area of intelligent transport systems and agriculture. And let us just go through this, and I'll try and keep to time as much as possible. So the main topic that we have been discussing in this workshop, or the topic, is around sustainability, and sustainability to a lot of extent is about continuity. And within the rims of agriculture, it falls under these three different pillars: society, economy, and environmental perspective. Within the society, it means about meeting today's needs in a way that we do not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Within economy, again, it's about profitability, it's about efficiency and productivity of agriculture in a way that that is profitable not only to the farmers or the middleman, but to the entire, all the stakeholders in the entire supply chain. And then again, from the environment perspective, it is about producing what we need, but in a way that does not compromise the air quality, the soil health and ergonomics, and water quality, as well as biodiversity. Now, having sort of set the scene of sustainability in the area of agriculture, we cannot but associate sustainability agriculture with the climate change, both as a way of agriculture affecting climate change, as well as climate change affecting agriculture. That sort of leads me to my next thing here. So agriculture can be seen both as a victim of climate change. So because as climate is changing, the temperature is rising, there is water logging and other things. So agriculture is getting affected. And due to the conditions that are being sort of prevail because of, erratic rainfall, then again, due to drought or temperature rise, insects which were not native to a particular area, that did not affect plantations earlier, start now affecting plants. And if you see these pictures down here, I have been working around tea for the last couple of years, and hence the pictures here are on tea. So because of climate change, the ideal sort of the temperature, the ideal environment of tea plantations is sort of losing, and hence there is mite infestation and other diseases like the leaf rust. So this is agriculture as a victim. And then again, agriculture itself is being like the culprit or the cause of climate change. Say, because people want to produce more to be able to meet the needs, they're using blanket use of chemical fertilizers without really sort of checking whether the chemicals are required or not in that particular area. The natural vegetation is getting destroyed again, because to make up land for plantations, then water is being rampantly used whether you need it or not, and that is also causing overproduction. Now, all this is sort of telling us that there is a need to know where chemicals are required. There is a need to know where water is required, so as to intelligently inform any farmer then who can then sustainably produce, and then we don't compromise what we have for the future generations. And this leads us to this topic of agricultural cyber-physical system. Now, most of our previous speakers, and I have really enjoyed attending the talks today have gone very details into the techniques, whether it's artificial neural networks or search techniques or deep learning techniques. I have sort of alluding to those here, but I will give a sort of an overall picture rather than going into every little technical details here. So what we see here, to be able to sort of go towards sustainable agriculture, what we have been working with, and it is getting more and more common all over the developing countries, and also in the, of course, it has been used in the developed countries from a long time, and we are now also starting to use in the developing countries. Is this sort of an developing an ecosystem where we have got sensors that senses the physical space. That means it senses the plant health, the soil health, the water quality, the air quality, and then the data that's being sensed is then sent into the cyberspace, which is basically the space where the algorithms work, our deep learning techniques, our computer vision techniques, our big data analytics technique work there. And once this we have got this data analysis happening there, we then feed back the intelligence back to the field and say that yes, this part of the farm lacks in this particular nutrient, whether it's potassium, whether it's nitrogen, or carbon dioxide, and hence feed it with this this variable for this amount of quantity. So we sort of give back an exact intelligence to the farmer, and then they are able to give more targeted action. Now, I'll just go through each of these different parts and give certain things that are available in each of the different, that means the sensing, the cyberspace, and the actuating. Now, the entire cyber-physical system, the physical and the cyberspace is then connected by the network in between. Now, with regards to soil sensors, there is a number of soil sensors, both in situ as well as the ones that you test in the lab. You take a sample of the soil, and also there is a lot now available via the wireless ones, which is connected by the IoT. And these sensors primarily work using the time domain reflectometry, and time domain reflectometry can check soil moisture, pH, as well as carbon dioxide, as well as some of the essential nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. There's also the necessity of another important variable, that is supercritical carbon dioxide, which is measured via membrane-based sensors. So there are different types of sensors that can be placed in the soil to be able to detect the different things. So data is collected in different ways. So we have got data coming from the soil sensors. The other part of data which I have been working on recently is the remote sensing data. So remote sensing data is basically sensing something, whether it's soil, whether it's plant, without really touching that object. So so it could be remote sensing by drones. It could be remote sensing by sensors that are placed on tractors, or more often than not, it is remote sensing through via the satellites. And the remote sensing technology basically works by measuring the reflectance from the surface. So whether it's the soil surface or the water surface or the plant. So it's a reflectance along the entire, the spectral domain that's been measured, and then that's been used to do more intelligent techniques. So through this remote sensing, we can measure soil moisture, we can do weed density, we can do crop height, the phenological stages of crops, as well as the nutrient levels of the crop. And like we see in this little diagram and below, depending upon the phenological stage of wheat or maize, there is different heights and different growth rates. Now this then tells us here, it gives you the range in which the reflectance is being measured, or the entire spectral. Now, remote sensing is not a new thing. It's something that started around way back in the 1970s or like late 1960s. But what has changed along the years is that before, the measurement was only done in the visible light and a part of the near infrared. But now we have got the entire spectrum, and also very, very narrow bands we are able to measure. And because we are able to measure in narrow bands, we are able to detect separate variables of the soil and water properly. Say, for example, potassium, nitrogen, and everything, because of these narrow band, measurements that is able to do. We are also able to, measure the interaction between various molecules. So we have got this entire range between thermal, the ultraviolet, and so on and so forth. Now, for example, by measuring in the thermal infrared, the spectrum, we are able to measure whether a plant is having stress because there is too much of evaporation. So we are being able to see whether it's been water stressed. We are able to see whether the soil has got moisture, and it's primarily from this, the thermal infrared, that particular part of the spectrum. Now, how do we do it? We do it by getting from the different, places, whether it's NASA, ESA, ISRO in India, and so on, who has got the satellites. Data is mainly provided via indices, like the ones that I have in here. The one that is commonly used is the NDVI, or the normalized difference variable index, where we basically look at the reflectance in the near infrared minus the reflectance in the visible spectrum divided by NIR, the near infrared, and the visible plus the visible spectrum. Now, what happens is that if a crop is very healthy, it's got very high amount of chlorophyll, the reflectance, so most of the visible light is absorbed and the reflectance is lesser. Now, if the reflectance is lesser, the numerator in NDVI is a bigger value. So a bigger value NDVI would mean either the plant is very healthy, or in some cases, it could also mean that the plant is now matured. Say, for example, when the wheat is ready to be plucked, so it's more matured. So, and then it's ready to be harvested. So every plant, which is very, very interesting, is that when we do data science, we sort of try and understand that every plant, say, for example, wheat, maize, rice, they all have a very unique NDVI signature. And by detecting this NDVI signature, we are able to then differentiate, yes, this particular field has got wheat, and the other particular field has got, some other crops in it, or it has got buildings. Now, moving on from here, again, like I said, the sensors could be anywhere, because what we have realized in the projects that we have done is that one particular, sort of domain of sensors is not enough. Satellite on its own is not enough because it's cloud coverage. The satellite does not cover all the time. It has to go around the Earth. Again, with sensors on the ground, there are other factors. Say, for example, we had a project where we fitted sensors on a pole in rapeseed fields. And then, there were some shadows, and then the crop grew, and then the data was not very accurate. So what we need to do is then take data from different sensors and then fuse them to then find out more intelligence there. This is basically tells us how the state of the art, like I said before, using satellite data for, for anything. For me, I'm sort of concentrating on agriculture here, but we are also using in other places, such as looking at air quality, such as looking at water quality using sensor data. So this data was available from way back. The difference is that we have got higher resolution now. Landsat in 1972 had an 80-meter. Sentinel-2 at the moment, we have got 10 meters. There is higher temporal frequency. Before, Landsat has got 18 days. Now the Sentinel comes back in 5 days, or sometimes at different angles, we can get even lesser than 5 days. There are multi-purpose sensors and also hyperspectral remote sensors as well. Now, as I was saying, that we have got the, the physical space, we have got the sensors and then the detection. Now, the data then that's collected is passed on to the cyberspace of the agricultural cyber-physical system via the network. Now, it could be a different kinds of network. I've just given some examples where Zigbee is used, IoT is the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth as well. But there are different number of challenges here, research challenges, that cybersecurity. There's also the physical security. The actual devices are getting stolen in many of the developing countries, and we are finding that a problem. Then, of course, the latency and then the scalability and the reliability is also an issue. Now in the data analysis and the decision making, so the data now has gone through the network, reached the cyberspace. Here we then now need to extract the data, clean the data, fuse the data, and then apply different kinds of techniques to the data to then be able to do different analysis. Now the data that then goes in is meteorological data, the soil quality data from the different sensors, the plant health, whether it's infections, whether it's stress. So another kind of project that we're doing in India is with pomegranates, which because of climate change, again, there is a lot of infection that's happening in the pomegranate, in the leaves and the fruits. So what the farmers are doing is that they take a photo of the leaf and then send it to the database where we then do the pattern, the image processing, and then match it to what kind of disease that particular leaf might be having, and then send the advisory back to the farmers. So that is where we have got the infections here. And then, of course, you can test the different phenological stages, and then the altitude as well as the cultivar type goes in as the input. I'll just give two examples of some projects that we have just completed. So the first one here, knowledge transfer partnership project that was funded by Innovate UK and NERC, which we just completed, which we were looking at data from the MODIS satellite. And then we were trying to first find out fields in the United States which grew wheat. Now, to find out the fields that grew wheat, we basically had to concentrate on the NDVI signature that I just explained earlier. And then we used the long short-term memory network to then be able to detect that these are the fields that have got wheat. We use some of the manually tagged data to then train these networks. Once we identified that these are the fields that are wheat, we then went on to see monitor the crop health and also predict the value of the crop and when it would be ready to harvest. The other thing that we did was, this was a project in the United Kingdom, and its main purpose was to fuse data in the soil and the data of the satellite, where we use ProVA-V satellite data at the time. Again, it's a free source of data, to then be able to predict the harvest for a rapeseed. The ground sensors that we use were mainly inbuilt in the university itself, and then we use the satellite data with it to then predict the harvest for the rapeseeds when it was ready to harvest. Now, all these things that I have been talking about that we have been working on, it's primarily at the adaptations to climate change. However, there's another way that we could tackle with climate change, and that is through mitigation. This is not our project, it's Rainforest Alliance's project that I thought I would just give an example, because this is very much I think it would be very applicable to Africa and the African scenario. It's a community-based project. It's called the Carbon Coffee Project. It's available online. There is the information about it, and it's in the coastal areas of Mexico. So what has been happening there is that the farmers have been given incentives to preserve their native forest by planting trees, by providing them incentives to not cut down the trees to have their coffee filters. Now, once they do this, and then they can now earn carbon credits in the carbon market, and the credits that they earn in the carbon market then goes back into the coffee farms. I've just finished this last slide. Thank you. So, and then thank you. So that is sort of very briefly what I wanted to speak about, and thank you so much. I just have one last slide, which gives a sort of the satellite data that can be used from the